Guys, PGA Tour chase or fade here that we got coming up. We're going to agree or disagree with some of the following things about, of course, this upcoming Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines in California, San Diego specifically. So, Reid, we'll begin with you. 6 of the top 10 golfers in the world rankings, they're teeing it up, obviously, at Torrey Pines, including the world's number 1, Jon Rahm. Rahm comes in $11,200. He is pricey. Chase or fade Rahm is your favorite play here north of 10K.
Yeah, this one's going to be tough. I think the price tag on Rahm is actually too inexpensive. It's too cheap with what he's able to do at Torrey Pines specifically. And he dominates this course, this area of California at Torrey Pines. And San Diego is, like he's mentioned it, his second home. So I don't mind if you want to pay up. But you talk about guys like JT, Hideki. DJ hasn't played yet this season, but he does extremely well in California. And Xander Schauffele, he came up a runner-up, right? I know I just did the Geoff Ulrich where I mentioned everybody in that range, but I'll chase Jon Rahm at the top because I think a lot of people are going to look at what he did last week and say, maybe he's not there just yet, but this guy dominates San Diego.
All right, so Geoff, now you need to mention everyone, but give me your favorite.
Disrespectful. Reid is right. Rahm is too cheap again. I mean, he was too cheap last week, but the putter just didn't get hot. It's not like he played that badly. He was right there, still a top 20 finish, and now he comes to his favorite track ever in Torrey Pines. I get that the field is more elite, but it does feel like a spot where people are just going to be talking themselves out of using Jon Rahm in big fields, and I'm not even sure if his ownership is going to get to the point where you need to worry about it too much. I mean, look, you can make great balanced lineups here, and I think, again, that's probably just going to draw a little bit of ownership away from Jon Rahm. But realistically, this is the number 1 player in the field by a pretty wide margin at this point. JT, when he gets hot, is great. Hideki's playing well, but like Jon Rahm's the best player in the world. He's not really priced, like there is that big a gap. So you're getting a really good price on him. You have a spot where the field is probably going to be inclined to make all these fancy balanced lineups. Yeah, you should probably just roster Jon Rahm. He's a little bit too cheap here.
All right, Len, so we got a couple people chasing Rahm. What do you think north of 10K, 11-2?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Reid and Geoff said, that, 11-2 is a very fair price for a top guy on the board. We see the 11-7s, 11-9s that we used to in the past few years. I mean, maybe just the fields are too good and the guys are too balanced and stuff. My big argument against Jon Rahm is that if you play Jon Rahm, you'll have to probably dip into the 6,000s. And I'm having a lot of trouble really identifying guys in this quality field in the 6,000s who I really feel good about. So I think Jon Rahm is a great play, but just be mindful that if you do that, you're going to have to go elsewhere to fill out your lineup with some guys toward the bottom.
Okay, so we've been talking about guys that are more than 10K. Let's go just sub 10K here and stay with you, Len. Of course, a DraftKings favorite, Bryson DeChambeau. He's 9,900. Didn't play a couple weeks ago. He pulled out of the Sony Open with, of course, that wrist injury. How we feel about him going into this one here?
Oh, Bryson, DraftKings' very own Bryson DeChambeau. He played Torrey Pines. He played the Farmers a few years ago. He didn't make either cut. That's not really on my radar. That was 4 or 5 years ago. He was leading the U.S. Open in June, and then Brysoned himself, and he ended up 26th. In a perfect world, he really is a perfect fit for this course, but something always seems to happen, and it's really hard to wrap your arms around that. So I don't know, maybe if you're really looking to separate yourself and go for the big hit in a tournament game or a GPP, or, maybe he's the play, but in a cash game, maybe for the more conservative player, maybe Bryson DeChambeau isn't for you this week.
Reid, is Bryson for you this week in that 9K range?
I mean, everybody knows where I'm going here. It is
Yes.
the easiest thing.
Yes.
$9,100. It's a one Tony Finau. If there's 1 week, and I'll keep this quick, if there's 1 week to play Tony, it's this week. He putts masterfully, and his around the green game here is great. He just has such a good track record here. So give me Tony.
See, Reid, went and M. Night Shyamalan me. I thought he was going to go Bryson because they're good friends and all, Geoff.
No, man. No.
I mean,
switch it up. The village
Tony
style.
Finau's putts so well here, he's never won. that's interesting.
Runner-up finish. Not too bad last year.
Look, the question was about Bryson, not Tony Finau. I mean, Coming on, the thing that worries me is just the wrist issue. I mean, look, Bryson is a guy who just obviously smashes that driver all week. And if there's injuries piling up now coming to a place like Torrey Pines, I personally think that's enough to have just like a little bit of worry. Bryson is a very well priced here. I mean, he leads the field in birdie or better percentage. Like for DFS, that is a stat that matters. I mean, even if he finishes T26 again or something and he just racks up a ton of eagles and birdies, I mean, that's fine, especially on a place where I like Torrey Pines, where there's just not that many scoring chances available. So I think Bryson is like a very good value here. But I think it was Len who said it. Like, he's very volatile. I mean, this has been a tough spot for him. And obviously now we have like this wrist thing to factor in. And it's PGA. We don't get like a ton of injury updates here. We just get mentions from the players. That's all we really have to work off here. Bryson's really volatile this week, but he is underpriced. I mean, this is not a player, in my opinion, with his, like I said, the way he produces for DFS, that should be ranked under 10,000 in this field. So, take that for what you will. Reid is right. Like, the safer play, if you're doing cash games, 50-50s, is to load up on guys like Tony Finau and Mark Leishman here. But man, GPPs, like, I think a lot of people are going to be scared off of Bryson. I think he's underpriced there at 9,900.
Well, and to Geoff, your point, there's so many players that you can play in the $9,000 range, like all of them, right? You can make a really good argument about.
Moose, what about the 8K range? Pretty interesting here because you have Patrick Reid, $8,700, of course, defending champ, blew away the competition last year, 5-stroke win, which was the largest of his career. How do we feel about him, returning to the scene, so to speak, and trying to take down this tournament again?
Yeah, I'm just not sure if like Reid is quite like in terms of form, like really as sharp as he was at this time last year. I mean, he dealt with the pneumonia thing back last fall. He looked okay, like in a couple starts, but I mean, last fall, but the Hero Challenge and stuff, but that's not a real event. He doesn't really look that sharp the last two events. Reid has to be so sharp around these greens and with the putter because he doesn't have the distance or the ball striking of the other top players. I just don't think he's there yet in his preparation. So he's a player I don't mind fading at all. I don't mind going back to Corey Connors at 8,800, but realistically, the guy I wrote up this week is Maverick McNeely. I think everything fits well for this guy. His ball striking is way up over his last two starts. He's a West Coast player. He just about won in Napa Valley on POA greens. Very similar kind of style setup, a little bit easier, but similar par 72 setup at Silverado. And I mean, he grew up around here. So Maverick McNeely playing very well, high-end putter too. That's where I want to go in the 8K range here. There's a few other players you could look to, but McNeely at 8,200, I think he's a really good value there.
Len, chase or fade Patrick Reid being your favorite play in the $8,000 range?
Yeah, is spot on. Reid is just not where he was a year ago at this time. I think he had only one top 10 in the entire second half of 2021, if we want to exclude the Hero, and I do. And that was in Bermuda, of all places. So really not in form. And that was long before the illness. So, yeah, 8,500 Matthew Wolff. I was big on Matthew Wolff last week, and he had finished me by 9:30 on Thursday morning. So it's a little hard to jump back on board when that happens, but I really think he's a good fit this week. He was 21st here a couple of years ago. We know he hits the ball far, and he's a pretty good scrambler as well. So in that range, that's who I'm looking at, certainly more than Patrick Reid.
Well, Reid T. Fowler did all this Reid slander. It has to be rubbing you the wrong way. How are you feeling about
I
Patrick
am not
Reid?
in as good a form this week as I was last year at this time. So
I totally agree.
Right, exactly. Too much crazy football. But no, look, I mean, both of these guys mentioned the two other players that I wanted to talk about in Matt McNeely and Matt Wolff. But the other guy is Max Homa, the guy that I wrote up in my article. And I think when you take a look at from a California tilt or slight perspective, he's one of the best, right? He loves this area, this part of the country. He grew up in Los Angeles. But sans that, you take a look at two of his three wins at Quail Hollow and then at Genesis. Both have that similar style setup of this course, right? The traditional tee to green setup. It's going to be Max Homa, if not those two other guys that the guys mentioned.
All right, we need a Slater-proof pick, and Reid will go right back to you. Who's your favorite to win this thing?
Well, I mean, again, Tony Finau is my favorite to win this one, but I'm going to give you a long shot who I think can contend here, Cam Davis. Take a look at the driver and what he can do and his experience on these type of courses. I think he's set up for a good week, but if not him, give me Tony Finau.
Len, who's going to take down the Farmers Insurance Open?
Well, I'm not going to be as bold as Reid and go. I'm going to be a little bit more chalky. But yeah, I do like Tony Finau. I think he's a good fit this week, and certainly at 9,100. Last year he was 10-7, finishes second, and somehow he loses $1,600. But my pick this week is Xander Schauffele. For years, he just could not play this course well, and who knows why? It was his home track. But he finally figured it out last year. He tied for second behind Patrick Reid. He's a great long iron player. We know that's one of the things you need to do well this week. He hasn't won officially, outside the Olympics, since the 2019 Tournament of Champions. I look for Xander to finally get it done this week.
And Moose, what do you think, John Rahm?
I kind of like going to Xander too. John Rahm is just feels too easy. I like Xander as a pick as well. McNeely is kind of my dark horse. I think he's a very good top 10 bet too.